If you've just opened Adobe Fresco and you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed by the layers and the settings, or even just where to find those things, I totally get it. Adobe Fresco is a super powerful app, but it can feel a little bit overwhelming to get started with, especially if you are transitioning over to using it from other apps like Procreate. I'm gonna deep dive on everything that you need to know about layers, layer tools, layer settings, grids and guidelines, and all of those little things that you might know how to do intuitively in other apps that you're using, or maybe you're a complete beginner and this is your first time learning how to do them. So grab your iPad and let's get started. Welcome back to my Adobe Fresco mini-series. If you are brand new here and this is the first video you are clicking on, hello. My name is Laura. I am a digital illustrator and a content creator, and welcome to my cozy creative corner of the internet. I already have a ton of videos in this series, so if you haven't seen those ones, I will link the playlist up here so you can go back and watch the other videos in this series as well. In today's episode, we are going to be diving into layer tools, because I have heard you guys in the comments ask me about all of those little things that you might know how to do in other apps. Simple things like copy and paste, duplicate, creating groups, creating masks. I know that in Adobe Fresco, those things are different and that they're a little bit trickier to find when you first start using the app. So that's what we are going to look at today. And if that is the problem you have been struggling with, go and grab your iPad. We're gonna solve it together. We are back in the Adobe Fresco workspace, and I've opened up a little document with this cute kawaii crab to show you some layer actions and layer settings inside in a document that I've already created with different layered artwork, so you can kind of see like what it would actually look like in practice. So the first thing that you need to know about your layers, or one of my favorite things about Adobe Fresco layers, is this little button in the top right hand corner here that looks like a little sandwich. This pops our layer preview in and out. And what makes Fresco different to other apps that I've used with layers, specifically to Procreate? If you're a Procreate user, you will know what I'm about to talk about viscerally. You will have experienced this viscerally, which is accidentally drawing on the wrong layer because you don't know what layer you're on. With Fresco, you can have your layer preview out at all times. So when you are drawing on a new layer, or you're drawing on a layer, your layer preview doesn't disappear. It's there all of the time. You can see the layer that I'm working on is highlighted in blue. So at any point when I'm working on my art, if I need to check if I'm on the correct layer, I just need to quickly reference this layer preview, check which layer is highlighted in blue, and make sure that that is actually the layer that I wanted to draw on. So you don't have to pop your layer settings in and out. You can have it out, or you can have it hidden. You just have to tap that little sandwich menu in and out. That is your layer preview. Next, let's talk about the different types of layers that we have in Fresco, because as we explored in this episode of the mini-series, there are 3 different types of brushes in Fresco. So we have our pixel brushes, we have our live brushes, and we have our vector brushes, which means there are different types of layers. So when you look at your layer preview here on the right, you can see mine. Each layer has this little circle to the left-hand side of it, and that little circle has a label in it to tell you what type of layer it is. So you can see a lot of my layers have a circle with another circle inside of them, and that means they are vector layers. This little squiggle that I did on screen was using a vector brush, so that is on a vector layer. If I create a new layer and grab a pixel brush and then draw on the screen, you'll see that that layer created gets the little pixel logo because I've used a pixel brush. Live brushes are also pixel brushes, so when I create a new layer and I draw with a live brush, you'll see that that also gets the pixel layer icon. And then the third type of layer that we have inside an Adobe Fresco has actually got nothing to do with brushes. It is the file or image layer. So you can see my background layer down here has a different little icon on it. It has like that little picture icon, and that is because the background layer, usually when you open up Fresco, gets set as an image or file layer. If you import a file to your canvas, so if you go over here to add a new layer as an image, element, or file, then when you click on that, so let's go ahead and bring in this little flower from my files library. So that gets added to my canvas. And again, you can see over here on my layers menu, it has that little image icon beside it because it is an imported image or file. Now, this does mean that I can't grab a pixel brush and draw on this flower. It will add it to the pixel layer. Do you see how even if I select the flower and then draw, my lines get added to the pixel layer that is underneath that flower? And that is because it's a file or image layer at the moment, which means we can't actually draw on it. But we can easily convert it into a pixel layer if we do want to do that by tapping on the layer, double tapping to open up our layer actions menu. And then down here at the bottom, you'll see this option that says convert to pixels. If I tap that, it will then change the little icon that is on the left-hand side of my little imported flower here. You'll see that now it is showing that it is a pixel layer. So if I grab my pixel brush and draw, I can draw right over that flower and right onto that layer. Let's go ahead and get rid of some of these layers and look at how we actually do that. There's a couple of ways that we can hide layers and toggle on and off visibility. The easiest way is to tap this little eye here on the right-hand side. This is the quick toggle on, toggle off. And you'll see that when you have toggled off the visibility of the layer, it gets that little eye with the cross through it added to the layer preview. So when you look at your layer preview, you can easily see which layers you have toggled on and off. You can also double tap on the layer to find the hide layer button inside in your layer actions. If you want to delete a layer, again, double tap on it and then just select the delete layer button. There's also a clear layer option. So if you've created a layer, made a mistake, obviously you can grab your eraser brush and erase things. But if you want to quickly just clear a layer without like deleting it and creating a new one, double tap your layer, and then we're going to use this clear layer button here. And what that does is it maintains the layer. It keeps what type of layer it is. So it's kept it as a vector layer, but it's just cleared all of the illustration and artwork off of that layer. If we want to batch delete layers or batch any action on a layer, so we want to select multiple layers, what you're going to do is double tap on any layer, and then you're going to select the select multiple option from those layer actions. Now you can go ahead and select as many layers in your layers preview menu as you want. And then you're going to click on the three dots to open up your layer actions. With multiple layers, we can duplicate the layers, copy the layers. We can merge them down together. So if you want to combine them into one layer, we can lock them or we can delete them, which is what I'm going to do because these are extra layers that I created on this artwork, which I'm now going to get rid of. Let's look at some of the other layer options. Again, to access the layer actions, you can either double tap on any layer or you can just tap that three little dots there on the bottom right-hand corner. The options that you'll get by double tapping or tapping the three dots are exactly the same. And there's going to be some slightly different actions whether you are on a vector layer or on a pixel layer. For example, you can see that at the moment I am on a vector layer. So if I open up my layer options, you'll see I have that convert to pixel layer option down the bottom, just like I had with the file or image layer. So I can actually convert my vector layer into a pixel layer. Now you can see that it has that little icon beside it to show me that it is a pixel layer. One question that I did get in the comments of one of the previous videos in this series is it possible to do the opposite? Can you tap on a pixel layer and revert it to a vector layer? And as you can see that option does not come up. Currently, you cannot vectorize pixel art or pixel layers inside Fresco. Maybe that's a feature that they're going to give to us at a certain point in the future. If you want to just vectorize the art as it is, if it's Procreate art, if it's Photoshop art, I have a whole video here on my channel where I go through my exact method that I used to use in the past before I discovered the Fresco app to vectorize layered Procreate artwork, but the same method would actually work if it was raster art from Photoshop or even from Canva or something like that, for example. Let's get back to our layer options here in Fresco though. So another quick action that we have here on the right-hand side is the plus icon. We can tap this here on the right to add a new layer, or we can also find that in our layer actions by tapping here. Let's go back and select multiple, and we're going to look at another action that we can do with multiple layers. The next quick action that we have here on the right is that folder icon, and that is the icon for grouping layers together. So we can select multiple and then we can tap this layer on the right to create a group. To view the layers inside your group, you're going to double tap on the group in your layers. So you can tap to view it. You can tap to open actions for the group. So ungroup layers is an option that will come up when you open the actions. The same if you tap down here, ungroup. You can still go into select multiple and select multiple groups, for example, and then group those groups together and have the groups inside in the groups. But let's not confuse ourselves by doing that right now. You can obviously duplicate the layer group, copy the layer group, cut the layer groups if you want to paste it into another Adobe Fresco document. You can lock it, or you can merge the layers in the group into one single layer. And if you want to actually look at the layers inside in that group, you're going to double tap it, and then it's going to open up like this mini layers preview inside in the layers preview that shows you the layers just in that group. You can easily go back to all of your layers by tapping that little arrow on the top. That will take you right back. And then you can control your options for your layers inside in your layer group. You can still edit them, double tap them to open up the layer actions or the three dots again, and still you can duplicate, you can select multiple, you can clear them, you can delete them. If you've accidentally added a particular layer from a group and you want to take it out of the group, you can just grab it with your pencil or your Apple Pencil and then just pull it over the arrow here, which will take you back to your main layer menu, and then you can place it back in the correct order. As I said, you can tap on any layer group and press the ungroup layers button at any time, and then it will take them out of that group. The folder icon is only visible when we have selected multiples. So if you're not seeing it on the right-hand side of your quick actions bar there in Adobe Fresco, it's because you haven't opened select multiple layers. As soon as you select multiple layers, you'll see that little folder pop up. The other quick action that we have is this little icon with the arrow pointing down, and that is the quick action to mask down. Let's go ahead and create a little mask here. I'm gonna just like draw over this star, and then quick action to mask down, and then obviously that layer where I draw will only be visible where it connects to the layer beneath it. I always find it really difficult to explain what masking a layer does, but basically it just clips the layer that you're drawing on to any of the objects on the layer below. So if I draw on empty space in this layer, you'll see in my layer preview, it does create the art. And if I release that mask, you'll see that my brushstrokes do still exist. But when I turn the mask on, I only see the art where there are objects or lines or pixels in the layer underneath it. So it basically clips it down onto them. Then the final quick action that we have here on the right is an adjustment layer. If you are an Adobe user, you might be familiar with adjustment layers. And it's basically Adobe's way of like adjusting the brightness, the hue, saturation, or the color balance of your document. But what's really great about adjustment layers, or adjusting your appearance of your layer with adjustment layers, is you make the changes on a whole separate layer. So let's go ahead and select this brightness contrast adjustment layer. So I can increase the brightness, and you'll see that over here my image gets brighter. I can increase the contrast and we can see the changes there. I can decrease it, make it a little bit hazy, or like lower the darkness, and it's a completely different color. So I can make all of those changes. In other apps, what happens is as I make those changes, I'm making it to the whole canvas or the whole document. Whatever layer I'm sitting on is going to make those changes. So if I've got it all grouped together, if I've got it all merged down into one layer and I do these adjustments, it's changing the whole layer. With Adobe Fresco and adjustment layers, what happens is you are making those changes on a whole separate layer. So you can see I've got this layer now that has no little dot on the left-hand side, but it's showing me this brightness contrast icon. If I toggle that layer's visibility off, those changes go away because I haven't actually made those changes to my layers underneath. Now this is great if you like to edit photos, for example, inside in your digital illustration apps. This is something that I personally love to do, is create doodles on top of photos, and then sometimes I'll like tweak the brightness and saturation of the photo. Once you increase brightness to a certain level and you remove all of the value from super bright parts of your photo, it's really hard to undo that and bring it back to the color that it was before. But with adjustment layers, you make the changes on the layer. Once the adjustment layer is on, you can see those changes for any layers that are underneath the adjustment layer. So if I drag the adjustment layer down to just over the legs, you'll see that it's just changing the brightness and contrast of the legs. If I pull it up above the crab's body, then we see the changes here. If I put it behind the crab, we don't see any changes because there's no visible layer toggled on there. And then if I decide, actually, I don't like these changes, I've made too many changes, I don't like how my photo looks or how my art looks, I can just go into this layer and delete the adjustment layer. And then my actual artwork or my actual photo is not affected. So I really, really love that adjustment layers is a feature inside in Fresco. Let's quickly have a look at some of the other layer actions that we haven't covered yet. We've looked at adding layer and hiding layers. Another option that I really love is hide all other layers. This is just like one of those shortcuts that you never know when you're going to need to use it, but I've definitely been in situations where I have like multiple layer artwork and I'll like group together the parts that I'm still using, but I don't want to see like my sketches or my drafts anymore. If I click this hide all other layers, what's going to happen is it's going to toggle off the visibility on all other layers other than the one that I have selected. And then the same, once I've done that and I've toggled it all off, I'll see that option to show all other layers. So then it will show me all of the layers. Underneath that, we have the clear layer action, which we've already looked at, delete layer, select multiple layers, which we've looked at a lot. Then we have the duplicate layer, which is pretty self-explanatory. I use this a lot, especially actually with these kawaii smiley faces that I do. If I'm doing a little document where I have a lot of different characters that I'm creating, I will duplicate the smiley face so it looks the same on all of them. Then obviously we have copy layer. So let's go ahead and copy this kawaii smiley face. So we've tapped on the layer and pressed copy. Now if we tap on the layer again, we'll see the paste option because we have something on our clipboard. So if we click paste, it's going to add the duplicate or the copy to a new layer above. This is really handy as well, as I've already mentioned, if you are trying to bring layers in from another Adobe Fresco document that you've created. So maybe you have like an element or a little icon or a little bit of artwork that you'd like to bring into this document that you're working on. You can copy a layer in one document, then go back to your home page, open up another document and paste it in as a layer or a group of layers there as well. Then we also have our cut layer. So this does exactly like cut in a document. We'll cut it, it disappears. We tap again, paste, and it comes back, or we can cut it here and then paste it into another document. Underneath that, we have create an empty mask. We have mask layer contents, which we've already looked at. We can set it as a reference layer. Setting it a reference layer is really great if you want to fill areas of your document. So if you've created some line art and you would like to then start filling blocks of your document based on that line art, toggle on visibility of my sketch layer and then hide all other layers. And I'm going to set this as the reference layer. Now I'm going to create a new layer above this sketch layer, and I'm going to start imagining like this was my final line art and I wanted to quickly fill it with color. So I'm going to have my fill tool on, I'm going to tap fill, and you'll see that I'm on a new layer, but as I'm clicking, it's using the lines of that reference layer as a reference as to where to fill. And even if I create a new layer above this one and then click again and start filling, again, it's using that reference layer as a reference as to where to drop that color and fill it. The last one that we have here is the lock layer option. That locks it for editing. That means once it's locked, I can't draw on top of it. I can't move or transform it because it is a locked layer. This can be really handy again. If you've got a black background layer that you don't want to accidentally draw on, which is very difficult to do if you're in Fresco because you can easily see all of your layers all of the time, or if you have a particular layer that you're done with and you want to just like lock it to remind yourself that you're not editing it, you can lock that. So then again, once you've locked it, you can double tap to open up your layer actions and tap to unlock that layer so that you can continue to edit it. The very last thing that I wanted to touch on when it comes to layers is your layer blend modes. Again, I touched on this in my full tour of Adobe Fresco app. If you haven't seen that video, I will link it up here, and it's also in the Adobe Fresco beginners mini series playlist. That's quite a mouthful. So let's open back up our layers and bring them out again. And then if we tap on this next little icon down here, it gives us our layer properties. Depending on the type of layer that you have, there's different properties. So it will show you this is a pixel layer, this is a vector layer. If I have a file or image layer, it will tell me like this is the background, this is an image, this is a JPEG, this is a file. And then underneath that, we have our blend modes. So at the moment it's set to normal blend mode, but we have all of the common blend modes that you would expect. Darken, multiply, color burn, linear burn, darken color. If you're someone who's like, I've never used blend modes, what exactly can I use them for? And you would like a more in-depth tutorial on how I use blend modes sometimes in my artwork, let me know in the comments below and I would be happy to add that to a future episode in the series. Underneath blend modes, we then have our opacity slider, and this does exactly as it says in the name. We slide it down to reduce the opacity of the layer and up to increase the opacity of the layer. Another question that I got in the comments was something that you guys wanted me to circle back to when it comes to layers was the grids, how to turn them on, how to use them if you want to have like a reference grid. So let's hide our layer preview for a moment. And we're going to tap on this icon here that has like this little grid. And this is for our snapping settings, but also for our guide grids. So we've got a few different options here. The first one is grids. So if we tap that arrow, it'll open up a little drop-down menu. We'll see the word grids, and then we can toggle this on. And this is going to show you your drawing grids. This isn't a separate layer. It doesn't affect any of your artwork. So if you've never used grids before and you turn it on, don't panic. Your artwork does not now have a grid mask over it. Also, when you save and export a file, your grids do not get saved and exported. They're literally just there as a guidance for you if you need them for proportions or composition or even lettering. Within our grids, we also can choose our grid type. So from this drop-down menu, there is the graph grid and the perspective grid. I'm going to go back to the graph grid because we'll come to the perspective grids in a moment. You can change the opacity of your grid by sliding this up and down. So maybe you only want it as a barely there guide, or maybe you're like, I really need to have a very, very clear grid. You can slide that opacity up the whole way. You can also change the color of the grid. So for example, at the moment, the grid is set to gray, but maybe I'm working on a gray background and I still want to be able to see my grid. I can change the color of my grid, and then it instantly changes on my canvas. I can also change the spacing or the size of the grid. So at the moment, the squares are 118 pixels. So let's size them up and make them 250 pixels. Now we have a much bigger grid with bigger squares. We can also make it smaller. Let's take it down to being 80 pixels. Then we've got a really, really small grid, so you can play around with the size. Maybe you are a landscape or cityscape illustrator, you can use perspective grids. So again, we can select perspective grids from the settings. And we can also change how many vanishing points we have. Again, if you use perspective grids, you will know what this means. I personally don't use perspective grids in my art, but you can have 1 vanishing point, you can have 2 vanishing points, or you can have up to 3 vanishing points, which is for 3D. Let's go back to 1 vanishing point so it's easy to see. No matter how many vanishing points you have, you can also edit the vanishing points, which allows you to drag the vanishing point around the canvas. You can also change the density of the perspective grid. So it was set pretty high. There's a lot of lines going on there, but maybe you just want like something more simple, a few guidelines to help you with your perspective. And again, you can toggle up and down the opacity or change the color. The final type of grid is the symmetry grid. You're going to tap down to the symmetry section, and then you're going to just toggle that on and off. Then you've got loads of little icons here to choose from what type of symmetry you would like. You can have reflective or rotational. So how the brushes react on your canvas will be different depending on whether it's reflective or rotational. So if it's reflective, it literally copies the stroke like a mirror on the other side of the canvas. If we go with rotational, it mirrors it and reflects it. When you've got like rotational on like these ones with lots of different quadrants, it can create like these really nice effects. You can choose, as I said, from reflective or rotational. And again, you can choose if it is a vertical split, a horizontal split for either of them, how many sections you want it to have. So 3, 4, this one's got 5, this one's got 6. And then you can also have up here, I think that's 8 slices. You can also toggle to move the guide. So when you toggle this on, you can grab this little blue dot and you can actually rotate it around to exactly where you want those symmetry lines to be. And that is it. That is blend modes and opacity settings, layer actions, grids, guidelines, everything that you need to know about layers in Adobe Fresco. I hope that this deep dive into layers and layer tools in Adobe Fresco has given you a little bit more confidence using the app, and hopefully I've answered some of your questions and the things that you have been troubleshooting lately. But if there's anything that I have missed, go ahead and jump into the comments and let me know down there. I have loved chatting with the creative community in the comments of the other videos in this series, so I would be happy to troubleshoot any other Adobe Fresco things you were struggling with down there. Speaking of the creative community, if you did like this video and you found it helpful, be sure to click that thumbs up button and let YouTube know. It really helps that these videos reach even more Adobe Fresco users or digital art beginners to help them get the answers that they need as well. And if you want to join the cozy creative community, you can also click that subscribe button. We would love to have you in the group. If you're looking for more beginner tips with Adobe Fresco, you might like to watch this video next. In the meantime, I look forward to chatting with you guys in the comments, and I will see you in the next video.